So, Meta just dropped its latest AI, Llama 3. But here's the thing, calling it just one model, that's kind of missing the whole point. We're not talking about a single new thing here. Meta themselves are calling it a whole herd of models. Let's get into it.
And just so you know where all this is coming from, we're going straight to the source. This is the official research paper from the Llama team over at Meta. Think of it as our blueprint, right? It's going to help us unpack what they've built and, more importantly, why you should care.
Okay, so this leads us to the question that's on everyone's mind, right? We're getting new AI models thrown at us like every week. So, is Llama 3 actually a big deal? Well, the short answer is yeah, it's a very big deal. And you don't have to take my word for it. The data tells the whole story. All right, first up, let's tackle that big question. How does it stack up against the competition? In the world of AI, it's the numbers, the benchmarks that really separate the contenders from the pretenders. And Llama 3's numbers, well, they've got a lot to say.
Okay, take a look at this. This is Llama 3 going head-to-head with the heavyweights, GPT-4 and Claude. On general knowledge, that MLLU benchmark, it's right there, neck and neck with the very best. But where things get really interesting is when you look at complex math problems and those super tough graduate-level questions. It's not just keeping pace. In some areas, it's absolutely blowing past the competition. Yeah, it's a little behind Claude on one specific coding test, but look at the overall picture. This is a massive statement.
And honestly, this is the real story. This is the game changer. For what feels like the first time, we have one of the most powerful, most capable AI models on the planet, and it's open source. It's performing on par with these big, established, closed-source models. This completely changes the landscape for developers, for researchers, for everyone.
So, the next logical question is how? How did they actually do it? How does an open source model suddenly show up and go toe-to-toe with the titans of AI? Well, their secret sauce is actually pretty straightforward. It really boils down to three key things. But here's the kicker. They didn't get fancy and reinvent the wheel with the architecture. Nope, they kept it simple. Instead, they just went all in, relentlessly, on two things that matter more than anything else: getting the best data possible and training at a scale that's just mind-boggling, especially for an open model. And when I say massive scale, I am not kidding. Llama 3 was trained on over 15 trillion tokens. Now, a token is basically just a piece of a word, so yeah, it's an almost unimaginable amount of information, but the key here wasn't just the quantity. Meta was obsessed with the quality, filtering and cleaning all that data to make sure the model was learning from the best stuff. This whole process has a name. It's called pre-training. And honestly, the best way to wrap your head around it is to imagine sending an AI to the biggest, most perfectly organized library in the entire world. And its job is to read everything, every book, every article, to just soak up all the patterns of language, knowledge, and how to reason. That's the rock-solid foundation that Llama 3 is built on. Okay, so you take all that high-quality data, you train it at this massive scale, what do you end up with? Well, you get something that's way more than just a better chatbot. You get a tool that has some genuinely new, much smarter capabilities. And this is where Llama 3 really starts to flex. We're talking about being super capable in at least 8 different languages: English, Spanish, French, Hindi, you name it. It can write code like a seasoned pro. But the biggest deal, in my opinion, is the massive leap it's made in reasoning and its ability to actually use other tools to get things done. This example right here is perfect for explaining what tool use actually is. So, someone asks a tricky question about how inflation is hitting their grocery bill. The AI doesn't just take a wild guess. First, boom, it uses a search engine to pull up the latest inflation data. Then, it spins up a code interpreter to do the math step by step. And look, it shows you its work. This is a huge shift, you guys. We're going from just answering questions to actively solving problems. But get this, the biggest leap forward for Llama? It's still on the way. The team isn't stopping at text. They're teaching it how to see and hear, how to perceive the world just like we do. So over on the left, you're seeing the architecture for vision, how it's going to process images, even video. And on the right, that's the pathway for speech, so it can understand and respond to audio. And what's so cool is that these aren't just, little add-ons. They're being baked right into the very core of the Llama 3 model. This is a massive deal. It signals a fundamental shift in what we even call AI.
We're literally moving past language models and into the age of perception models. What does that mean for you? It means the AI of the future isn't just something you'll type at. It'll be something that can see what you see, hear what you hear, and interact with the world in a way that's, well, way more profound and useful than ever before. Now, of course, when you're talking about this much power, especially in a model that's open to everyone, you absolutely have to talk about responsibility. And to their credit, Meta spends a huge amount of time and research on safety. And their whole philosophy really comes down to this quote from the team. We believe responsible development requires being open. The idea here is pretty simple. If you release the models, then the entire global community, all the brilliant researchers and developers out there, can poke and prod at it, find the weak spots, and work together to build much better safety systems. One of the trickiest parts of this is something you could call the AI Safety Balancing Act. It's a real tightrope walk. On one hand, you have to crush the violation rate. That's when the model says something harmful or unsafe. But on the other hand, you also have to minimize the false refusal rate. That's when it gets overly cautious and refuses to answer a totally normal, safe question. Llama 3 has been carefully tuned to try and find that sweet spot, to be as safe as possible without being unhelpful.
And that really brings us to the final big picture thought here. Llama 3 is a huge, huge step towards democratizing AI. It's putting state-of-the-art power into an open source model available to pretty much everyone. And that leaves us with this massive, fascinating, and honestly, really important question for all of us. What happens next, now that this kind of power is in everyone's hands?